Welcome to this deep dive. We're jumping straight into a really significant piece of executive action today.
That's right.
It's Donald Trump's Executive Order 14148, signed January 20th, 2025, his first day back.
Yeah, day one. And the title itself tells you a lot. Initial rescissions of harmful executive orders and actions. Sets a clear tone.
Definitely. So our mission here is to, get a handle on the main goals of this order, see what areas it targeted right away.
Exactly. And for this, we're looking at a few things: the official text from the Federal Register, the White House website, plus some context from Wikipedia and Wikisource to kind of round it out.
Okay, let's unpack the purpose first. The order itself, it lays out a pretty broad aim.
It does. It talks about enacting policies to, and I'm quoting loosely here, make the nation united, fair, safe, and prosperous again.
And how does it propose doing that?
By restoring common sense to the government and unleashing the potential of citizens. That's the language used.
Right, and it frames the previous administration's actions pretty strongly, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It describes those policies as deeply unpopular, inflationary, illegal, and radical. Very direct language.
It specifically mentions concerns.
Yes, it points to DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives, border policies, and what it calls climate extremism.
It's important for you listening to remember that's the characterization within the order itself.
Hmm.
Different viewpoints would obviously describe those same issues very differently.
Precisely. We're just relaying what the source document states. And it positions this order as basically step one.
Just the beginning.
Yeah, the first move in a bigger plan to, in its view, repair institutions and the economy. It signals more changes were likely intended to follow.
Let's talk about the scale then. How many previous actions did this one order actually undo?
It's quite something. It explicitly revokes 68 executive orders and 11 presidential memoranda from the Biden administration.
68 EOs and 11 memos. Wow. That is a significant rollback right out of the gate.
It really is. And it wasn't just about revoking things on paper. There were immediate directives, too.
Like what? What were agencies told to do straight away?
Well, the big one was an immediate instruction to take immediate steps to end federal implementation of unlawful and radical DEI ideology.
So a very quick, very direct halt to those initiatives across the board.
Exactly. That signals a rapid shift in how the government approaches DEI system-wide. You can imagine the immediate effect that has.
And besides that immediate stop, it also set up a kind of review process, didn't it? With deadlines.
Yes, that's key. It gave the director of the Domestic Policy Council, the DPC, and the director of the National Economic Council, the NEC, 45 days.
45 days to do what?
To review all the federal actions that stemmed from those now rescinded orders. And then they had to decide whether to rescind, replace, or amend those actions.
Ah, so it's not just the top-level order, but all the practical things agencies were doing based on them.
Precisely. So within about 6 weeks, you could expect a whole cascade of follow-on policy changes based on that review.
So it wasn't just looking backward, undoing things, it was also looking forward.
Definitely. Those same directors, the DPC and NEC heads, also had that 45-day deadline to give the president a list of other Biden-era orders they thought should also be revoked.
Okay, so potentially even more rescissions coming down the pike.
And importantly, they were also tasked with suggesting new replacement orders or memos aimed at boosting American prosperity. So dismantle and rebuild, essentially.
Got it. What about national security? Was that addressed?
It was. The National Security Advisor got a similar task: 45 days to review all of Biden's national security memoranda.
Using what criteria?
The review was focused on whether those memos could harm national security, domestic resilience, or, interestingly, American values.
And then recommend rescissions based on that.
Correct. Recommend a list for rescission. It suggests a real top-to-bottom rethink of the previous administration's national security posture.
Now, there was one very specific, concrete outcome mentioned regarding law enforcement.
Ah, yes. The database. By rescinding Biden's Executive Order 14074, this new order effectively deactivated the National Law Enforcement Accountability Database.
And that database tracked.
It was designed to track misconduct allegations against federal law enforcement officers.
So its deactivation is a tangible result of this broader rescission order.
Exactly. It's a really clear example. And, the creation of that database and its removal really highlight differing approaches to transparency and oversight in policing.
Okay, let's dig into the main policy areas then. DEI, you mentioned, was a major focus.
Absolutely central. A huge part of this order was pulling back DEI policies across the federal government. It wasn't subtle.
It named specific orders related to DEI that were being revoked.
Yes, several key ones.
Can you list some of those for us?
Sure. There was Executive Order 13985. That one was about advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities. It had directed agencies to look for systemic disparities.
So rescinding that suggests those specific efforts were halted.
Presumably, yes, or significantly changed. Also revoked was 13993, which dealt with civil immigration enforcement policies. We'll come back to immigration. Then there was 14031, that was focused on equity for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, and 14075, advancing equality for LGBTQI plus individuals.
It's quite a sweep just in the DEI space.
It is, and there's more. Executive Order 14020, which set up the White House Gender Policy Council, that was rescinded, and 13988, aimed at preventing discrimination based on gender identity or sexual orientation.
And you mentioned the Gender Policy Council Order 14020 was actually hit twice.
Yeah, interestingly, it was rescinded by this executive order and also by another order signed the same day, titled something like Defending Women from Gender Ideology Extremism.
So a real double emphasis on removing that particular council.
It certainly underscores the focus on that area, yes.
Okay, shifting gears, climate change and the environment, another major area of reversal.
A huge one. This order kicked off a rollback of many Biden climate policies. It's a bit complicated with the Paris Agreement. Well, Biden had rejoined the Paris Accords via an executive order, which itself reversed Trump's earlier withdrawal. This new order rescinded Biden's rejoining order.
So the net effect is...
The U.S. is out of the Paris Agreement again, back to the pre-Biden status on that.
And it wasn't just international agreements, right? Domestic climate policy was hit too.
Oh, heavily. Executive Order 14008, the big one titled Tackling the Climate Crisis at Home and Abroad, was rescinded.
And what did the rescission of that order mean in practice?
It meant dissolving a whole bunch of bodies. The White House Office of Domestic Climate Policy, gone. The White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council, gone. The Office of Climate Change and Health Equity, the National Climate Task Force.
Oh, quite the clearinghouse.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it also revoked various specific environmental regulations from the Biden era and an order that was setting up a climate change support office. It was a broad dismantling of that climate agenda.
Okay. Third key area, immigration. We know Trump campaigned on significant changes here. How did this EO start that process?
Well, this order, 14148, was really the first official step. It rescinded several key Biden administration executive orders on immigration.
Signaling a clear shift away from those policies.
Exactly, a move away from the prior administration's priorities in immigration.
Which specific orders were targeted on the immigration front?
Let's see. There was 1200993, again, that touched on civil immigration enforcement priorities. Then 14010, which was about addressing the root causes of migration in the region.
Okay.
Also 14011, that established the task force focused on reuniting families separated at the border. And 14912, aimed at restoring faith in legal immigration systems. And finally, 1413, which dealt with refugee resettlement programs.
So taken together, the rescission of those orders suggests an end to efforts like family reunification, addressing root causes, and maybe a tightening of border policy.
That seems to be the direction indicated, yes. A reversal of policies aimed at supporting asylum seekers, refugees, and addressing migration drivers.
Now, there's a fascinating twist here. This order didn't just revoke Biden orders, did it? It also revoked an order that revoked Trump orders.
Exactly. It's like policy inception, almost. By rescinding Biden's executive order 13992, this new Trump order effectively reinstated several Trump-era executive orders from his first term.
So it's not just wiping the slate clean, it's actively putting older policies back onto the slate.
That's a good way to put it. A clear signal of intent to return to specific pre-2021 policies.
Which Trump-era orders were brought back to life, so to speak.
Okay, the list includes 13771, that was about reducing regulation and controlling regulatory costs, the one in, two out rule, essentially.
Right, I remember that one.
Then 13777, enforcing the regulatory reform agenda. 13875, about evaluating federal advisory committees. And then a cluster from late 2019.
Okay.
Point 13891 on improving agency guidance documents, 13892 on transparency and administrative enforcement, and 13893 about reinvigorating administrative PA-WIGO for accountability.
So a real return to that first-term focus on deregulation and administrative procedure reform.
Very much so. It shows how, in one move, This order reversed Biden policies and restored prior Trump policies, a very direct swing of the pendulum.
It really highlights the comprehensive nature of this day one action.
Absolutely. Designed to reshape federal policy rapidly across many fronts.
And just quickly, the formalities. It was published.
Yes, initially by the White House on January 20th, 2025, the day it was signed, then formally in the Federal Register on January 28th as Executive Order 14448.
And addressed to key advisors.
Yeah, right. The Director of the Domestic Policy Council, the Director of the National Economic Council, and the National Security Council, putting the onus on them to implement.
Okay, so let's try to bring it all together. Executive Order 14148, signed on day one of Trump's second term. A really far-reaching action.
Definitely.
It hits hard at DEI policies across government, rolls back climate and environmental regulations significantly, starts reversing Biden-era immigration policies.
And through that clever mechanism, reinstates several first-term Trump orders focused on regulation and administrative processes.
It's a very clear, very strong initial statement, reversing much of the previous administration's direction.
Precisely. And it explicitly sets the stage for more to come, with those 45-day review deadlines potentially leading to further shifts.
Which leads to a final thought for you, our listener. Given everything we've just discussed, the sheer breadth of these initial rescissions, the areas targeted, what do you think might be the most significant long-term consequence? And maybe, what areas do you expect could see the biggest policy shift develop as those 45-day reviews conclude?
Definitely gives you a lot to chew on.
It certainly does.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.